It all started on a Friday afternoon, the kind where the sun hit just right, warm on your skin but not aggressive, and the streets buzzed with people who had somewhere to be, or at least wanted to look like they did. Jalen Carter, 17, stepped off the city bus and stared up at the storefront. Aurelio and Sons. The name alone sounded expensive. Gold lettering, floor-to-ceiling glass windows, a doorman in a tailored charcoal suit who looked like he'd never blinked in his life. Jalen adjusted the collar of his shirt, took a breath, and stepped forward. He wasn't dressed flashy, just clean. White polo, fresh sneakers, dark jeans. His mother always said, "You don't have to be rich to look like you respect yourself." But he felt the eyes. From the second the glass door slid open and that blast of air conditioning hit his face, something changed in the air. Two salespeople near the back, white, perfectly groomed, whispering like snakes, glanced at him, then at each other. Jalen pretended not to notice. He walked slowly, hands out of his pockets, every movement deliberate. He wasn't here to steal. He wasn't here to cause trouble. He was here to buy his dad a birthday gift, or at least try. A week ago, he'd overheard his dad talking about a watch. Not just any watch. An Aurelio original, limited edition. The kind of thing you don't just find on Amazon. Jalen didn't have the money for it. Not even close. But maybe, just maybe, he could find something affordable. A smaller item. A leather wallet. Maybe a tie. Something with that same brand his father admired. But as he stepped toward the display cases, one of the salespeople suddenly appeared in front of him. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice dipped in honey but with steel underneath. Jalen smiled. "Just looking, thanks." Her eyes flicked over him again. Skin, clothes, hair, hands. He could see the math happening in her head. She didn't move. "Do you have an appointment?" she added, this time louder. Jalen blinked. "An appointment? To look?" The woman chuckled, but not kindly. "Well, we work by consultation. Usually." That was when he saw it. A white couple, probably in their late 40s, walked in just then. Woman in heels, man with silver hair and a Rolex that nearly blinded him. No appointment, no questions. They were greeted with champagne and a smile. Jalen's chest tightened. He stepped back from the glass and nodded slowly. "Right. Okay." But just as he turned toward the door, the second salesperson, a man this time, leaned over and whispered something into a tiny headset. And suddenly, a security guard appeared. Not loud, not aggressive, just there, tall, watching. Jalen froze. That's when he realized what this was. They didn't see a customer. They saw a threat. He looked back at the woman, whose smile had disappeared. Now she looked bored, maybe even irritated. "Let me guess," Jalen said softly. "You think I'm going to grab a watch and run?" She said nothing, but her silence screamed everything. Outside, the street felt different, colder, even with the sun still out. Jalen sat on the steps of a nearby building and clenched his fists. He hadn't done anything wrong. He'd barely even touched the glass. But they looked at him like he didn't belong, like his skin, his age, his hoodie was a warning sign. And the worst part? It wasn't new. It had happened in gas stations, malls, once even at the grocery store when he walked in and the cashier pressed the panic button before he'd even grabbed a cart. But this was different. He came to give, to buy, to celebrate his dad, and they made him feel like a criminal. His phone buzzed. "Dad, how's the hunt for my mystery gift going?" Jalen didn't answer. Instead, he looked down the street at the sign of another shop. Smaller, not as fancy, but warm, inviting. He got up and walked toward it. He'd find something there, not because he couldn't afford Aurelio, but because he refused to buy from people who sold shame with their silk. But that wasn't the end, not by a long shot. Jalen pushed open the door of the smaller store, Hamilton's Men's Goods, and was immediately met with a chime and the scent of aged leather and cologne. It wasn't flashy, no security guards, no champagne, but something about it felt safe. Behind the counter stood a black man in his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that had seen the world. "Welcome, young man," he said warmly. "Can I help you find something?" Jalen hesitated, then smiled. "I'm looking for a gift. For my dad." The man stepped around the counter. "Birthday?" Jalen nodded. "Well, you're in luck. Come, I'll show you the good stuff." For the next 20 minutes, they talked. About watches, sure, but also about fathers, about memories, about what it meant to be seen. Jalen told him, carefully, what happened at the other store. The man just sighed. "They've been that way since forever," he said. "Aurelio might make watches, but they can't tell the times changing." Jalen laughed. It felt good, like a weight had lifted. He finally settled on a handcrafted leather wallet, smooth, black, with subtle gold stitching. It wasn't flashy, but it was elegant, real, honest. "I think he'll love it," Jalen said. "He will," the man replied. Then he leaned in. "And so will you, because it's 20% off today. But don't tell anyone I told you that." Jalen laughed again and pulled out his debit card. It wasn't until he got home that he noticed something inside the bag. A handwritten card. "Never let small minds make you feel small. M.H." The next day was Saturday, his dad's birthday. Jalen woke early, wrapped the gift, and carried it downstairs. His dad, Marcus Carter, ex-Marine turned federal defense contractor, was sitting at the table, sipping coffee and scrolling through his tablet. Jalen placed the small box in front of him. "What's this?" Marcus asked, arching an eyebrow. "Open it." Jalen grinned. The look on his father's face when he opened that wallet. It was everything. Pure joy, pride, gratitude. "This is beautiful, son." Jalen shrugged. "You mentioned Aurelio. I couldn't afford their watch, but I wanted to get you something nice." Marcus's face changed. "You went to Aurelio and Sons?" Jalen hesitated. "Tried to, but they followed me, like I was gonna steal something, made me feel like trash. So I left." Silence. Then Marcus stood, slowly. He walked to his study and returned holding something. A small black business card with silver letters. He handed it to Jalen. Jalen read it. "Marcus Carter, Senior Security Advisor, Department of Defense, Pentagon." Jalen looked up. "You want me to take this back to them?" His dad smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "No, we're going together." 20 minutes later, Jalen and his father stepped through the revolving doors of Aurelio and Sons. Same security guard, same saleswoman. But everything felt different. Jalen walked a step behind his father, watching as the woman's expression changed from fake delight to confused discomfort. "Welcome to Aurelio and—" she began, but Marcus held up a hand. "I'd like to speak to the manager." She hesitated. "May I ask what it's about?" Jalen stepped forward now. "It's about the way I was treated yesterday, when I came in here alone." The woman blinked. "I'm sorry, But she didn't finish, because the manager had arrived. A tall, balding man in a three-piece suit. "Good morning," he said. "How can I help?" Marcus pulled out his business card and set it on the glass counter. The man picked it up. His face paled. Jalen watched the shift, the mental scrambling, the sudden fear. "I want to make this very clear," Marcus said. "My son came here to buy me a gift. Your staff followed him like he was a criminal. They judged him not by his actions but by his appearance." The manager stuttered. I'm sure it was a misunderstanding." "No," Marcus said calmly. "It was discrimination, plain and simple." The room went quiet. The other customers turned to listen. Jalen's heart pounded. Marcus continued. "You think because he's young, black, and walked in alone, he didn't belong here, that he couldn't possibly afford your merchandise. But let me tell you who he is. He's my son, and I don't care how expensive your watches are. His dignity is worth more." The silence was deafening. And then Jalen did something unexpected. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out the wallet from Hamilton's, held it up. "I bought this instead," he said. "From a man who didn't care what I looked like, who saw a kid trying to do something good." He looked around the store, meeting the eyes of every salesperson. "You could learn something from him." They walked out together, heads high. Marcus glanced sideways. "You handled yourself well." Jalen shrugged. "Didn't feel like it." "No, you did. You didn't let them take your power." And as they walked into the afternoon sun, something settled in Jalen's chest. Pride. Not just in his father, but in himself. By Monday morning, Jalen thought the entire event would fade away like an awkward dream. Something personal. Something he and his dad would just remember between them. But that's not what happened. Because someone had filmed the moment at Aurelio and Sons. A woman across the room, sitting with her daughter, had caught the entire interaction. Marcus's calm words, Jalen holding up the wallet, and the sharp silence that fell over the store. She posted it online with the caption, "This is how you stand up for your child. Black excellence. Don't ever let them shame you for existing." Within hours, the clip went viral. By Tuesday, it was everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Millions of views, thousands of comments. The way that father walked in and shut it down, legend. "I've been followed in stores too. We see you. We remember." Jalen is what every young man should aspire to be. Dignified, brave, respectful. Let's talk about the quiet power of black fathers. Jalen's phone exploded with messages. Friends, classmates, people he didn't even know. He tried to ignore it, stay grounded, but the magnitude was surreal. Even more surreal. The local news showed up at his school. Jalen was sitting in fourth period when his principal knocked on the door. "Jalen Carter, please come with me." He stood up, a dozen eyes tracking him as he followed her to the main office. 2 local reporters waited with cameras. His dad was already there. Jalen blinked. "What's going on?" Marcus gave him a small smile. "They want to talk to us about what happened." Jalen sighed. "Do we have to?" "You don't," one reporter said gently. "But a lot of kids are watching you now. Your story means something." Jalen looked at his dad. Marcus nodded. "This is your choice, son." And Jalen realized this wasn't about going viral. This was about being seen, and maybe helping others be seen too. The interview was simple. Jalen spoke about walking into the store, about how quickly warmth turned into suspicion, about how it felt like the walls closed in even though he hadn't done a thing wrong. Marcus talked about the look in his son's eyes when he told the story, the way he knew that feeling all too well. The first time it had happened to him, in 1989, in a department store in Virginia, with $300 cash in his pocket and a polite, "Can I help you, sir?" that quickly turned into, "Are you lost?" The interview aired that night, and that's when the emails started. Messages from kids across the country, black boys, brown girls, mixed teens, white allies. "I thought I was crazy for how I felt in stores. I never told my mom they watched me every time I walked into the mall. You said what I've always wanted to say. Thank you." Jalen read every one. It wasn't about the likes anymore. It was about being a mirror for someone else. A reflection of what they've lived through, but never had the words to explain. It was bigger than him now. 3 days later, Aurelio and Sons issued a formal apology. On their social media channels and website, "We deeply regret the way Mr. Jalen Carter was treated at our store. We recognize that our behavior reflected implicit bias and failed to represent the values we claim to uphold. We are undergoing staff training and community dialogue to ensure this never happens again." It was something. But Jalen didn't feel like clapping. Neither did Marcus. "We don't accept apologies as PR strategies," Marcus told him. "Change is proven, not posted." Still, something shifted. And it wasn't long before an unexpected call came in. "Jalen Carter?" "Yeah." "This is Michael Hamilton, from Hamilton's Men's Goods." Jalen smiled. "Hey, I loved that wallet. I'm glad. I've been watching what happened, and I think you have something to say, something important." Jalen tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "I run a mentorship group for young black boys, teens mostly. We talk about image, identity, resilience, and race. I'd love for you to come speak." "Me?" Jalen blinked. "I'm just a kid." "You're not just anything," Michael said. "You're the voice I wish I had when I was 16. The next Saturday, Jalen stood in front of a room filled with black boys just like him, some taller, some younger, some with wide eyes and notebooks in their laps. He was nervous at first, fumbled his intro, but then he told them the truth, that he almost let someone's assumptions change how he saw himself, that he almost believed them, that he almost walked out feeling less. "But here's the thing," he said. "You're not less. You're never less. You're worthy, even when they don't see it." One of the younger boys, maybe 12, raised his hand. What if they never stop looking at us that way? Jalen paused. Then we keep walking anyway, head high, shoulders back, because the world doesn't change because we wait. It changes when we show up. The room was silent, and then applause, not loud, but real. Outside, Michael clapped him on the shoulder. You got something, kid. Jalen smiled. I just spoke. You did more than that. He handed Jalen a small envelope. For you. Jalen opened it. Inside was a card that said, Come intern with us this summer. Let's build something together. Summer came fast. Jalen took the internship at Hamilton's Men's Goods, not because of the name or the gesture, but because of the way Michael made him feel when they first met. Seen. The store became more than a job. It became a classroom. He learned about tailoring, customer service, branding, but more importantly, about people. About how men carried their shame in silence, how image had become armor, and how style wasn't just about fashion. It was about voice. Michael taught him that. Every time you walk into a room, he said one day, you send a message before you speak. The question is, are you the author of that message, or are you letting someone else write it for you? Jalen never forgot those words. One day, a familiar name appeared on the schedule. Private styling appointment. Marcus Carter. Jalen grinned. His dad walked in exactly on time. Tall, proud, still a little stiff in his button-up. What is this place? Marcus asked, scanning the racks. My summer classroom, Jalen replied. Marcus nodded slowly. It's beautiful, just like that wallet. Jalen pulled out a blazer he'd picked personally. Deep navy with subtle charcoal plaid, sharp lines, classic cut. You wear this to D.C. and you won't have to say a word, he said. Marcus tried it on, checked the mirror. He smiled. You're good at this. Jalen straightened the lapels. I had a good teacher. That evening they sat on the porch, watching the sun drip down behind the houses like golden paint. Marcus turned to him. You know, your mom cried when she saw you on the news. Jalen smiled. I almost cried too. You held your own, Marcus said. Better than I did at your age. Jalen looked down. I didn't feel strong. You don't have to feel it to be it. They sat in silence for a while. Then Jalen asked, Why'd you give me your card? Marcus looked at him. Because I knew what would speak their language. Jalen nodded. I hate that we have to do that. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. One day, your name will be the card. A few weeks later, Aurelio and Sons reached out again. This time, not with an apology, with an invitation. They wanted to sponsor a new scholarship, in Jalen's name, for youth of color interested in fashion, design, or entrepreneurship. They asked him to attend a small event to announce it. Jalen hesitated. Marcus said, You don't have to say yes. Jalen thought long and hard. Then he smiled. I'm not going back for them. He looked at the kids from his mentorship group. I'm going back for them. The event was quiet, polished, predictable, until Jalen stepped up to the mic. He didn't give a speech. He told a story about the day he walked into that store and was told without words that he didn't belong, and about how he chose not to break, but to build. And now, He was building room for others. 1 year later, Jalen launched his own line, Carter by Jalen. Minimalist luxury, accessible pricing, and a mission stitched into every label, built for the underestimated. It wasn't just clothes, it was a mirror. And when young boys and girls tried on his jackets or bags or watches, they didn't just feel styled, they felt visible. When the world says, "You don't belong here," you have a choice: shrink or show up. Not with rage, but with presence. Not to fight, but to build something so loud they can't ignore you anymore. Because your name, it's not a warning sign, it's a legacy in progress. Walk in, look up, and make them remember it.